position and authority over them. They own, what they owed him as a minister of Jesus Christ, and yet he reminded them of what little he had taken from them and what little that he had required from them, and how that preaching the gospel was his focus and was his primary goal, and that their response should be a gracious response, and they should be ready to give and ready to support. They should also be ready to follow and obey the Word of God and follow after the Apostle Paul as he presented to them the Word of God, and to know that, like he says at the end of the chapter, verse number 9, that this is comparable to a race. The goal is to, in an immortal race, is to run well so that we can achieve the goal or attain the prize or the reward. The same attitude, the same desire should be evident in our service unto the Lord. Not that we have to run in order to be saved, or not that we run in order to be a better servant than others, but we should have that same zeal, that same fervor to run well in this race that we run in the cause of Jesus Christ. So in chapter number 10, he says, "Moreover, brethren, I would not that ye should be ignorant how that all our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea." Now it seems like this, it's a good point for a chapter break, but it seems like he's changing topics just a little bit. He was talking about temperance and showing restraint, and how that we keep under the body, and now he begins now to talk about, and I told you last week that we'd start talking a little bit about the forefathers and what the example they were for us. He kind of moves on to that here immediately in chapter number 10. He refers us back to the forefathers and how that we are related to them in some ways. There are forefathers in the faith, and maybe even in particular he's talking about maybe even amongst those Jews in the church at Corinth, how they could relate to their forefathers even after the flesh, their forefathers amongst the Jews and amongst the children of Israel. All of our fathers were under the cloud and all passed through the sea. There's also an idea here of how that they were together and they were in fellowship. They had this common set of circumstances that they went through and a common service that they rendered unto the Lord, and were all baptized unto Moses in the cloud and in the sea. That's a picture of how they were set apart, and that their worship should be in common but also separate from the world, which again kind of is what he was talking about at the end of chapter number 9. And did all eat the same spiritual meat, he says in verse number 3. Now, when he says that they did all eat the same spiritual meat, it is true that they all that were there ate the same spiritual meat. They were all sustained by God, and even physically they all ate of the manna that they ate of when they first left Egypt. And I didn't really make much reference to it, but in verse number 2, when he talks about the cloud, that's clearly a reference to the pillar the pillar of fire and the cloud that would lead them through the Exodus, and it kind of hovered over them. In a sense, they were baptized under that, and in the sea, they went through the Red Sea. In a sense, that was kind of like a picture of their baptism being set apart as well. It was renewed again when they went through the river of Jordan, when they entered into the land of Canaan, which the next generation did. So they were all the fathers were baptized in that cloud and in the sea. And the spiritual meat wasn't in the sea. They weren't. They might be weak or sickly, and some even sleep, as Paul would tell them later. And that could be true. I tend to think, and I don't think it's. I think I'm right. I tend to think that many of those that were turned out into the wilderness were saved. I think they got there, they were deceived by wicked men, and the terror and the fear of others was contagious, and they cried out, they complained to the Lord, and the Lord refused to give them the land of Canaan to that generation. And he sent them back out into the wilderness and it sounds harsh, until their carcasses would all fall. But they were there, their faith wasn't what it ought to have been. Many of them weren't saved, but I think there were some that were. And that they would fall short of going into that land of rest in a physical way, though I think the Lord would save their spirit and their soul. And so that's a possibility here as well in verse number 5, for they were overthrown